The morning Nadia Vasquez first walked into hearing room 4 of the Caldwell Federal Building, she told herself the only thing that mattered was being accurate with her Spanish. She was a volunteer, 6 weeks trained, and this was her first solo assignment. She had been told immigration hearings were procedural. Translate accurately, stay neutral, do not interject. She had been told to translate, nothing more. She had not been told what to do when the procedure itself went wrong, or how to sit still while it happened in front of her. She had arrived 20 minutes early and signed in at the security desk downstairs. The officer there handed her a clip-on badge without looking up. She rode the elevator alone, found room 4 at the end of a corridor whose floor had been buffed to a low shine, and pushed open the door into a room that smelled faintly of old paper and cleaning solvent. She sat down in the interpreter's chair, opened her notepad, and told herself she was ready. The room was small and government gray, 2 long tables, a federal seal on the wall behind the officer's bench, a wheeled cart holding a monitor and keyboard nobody had touched since it was installed. The fluorescent light above the respondent's table flickered every few seconds, a slow pulse that nobody seemed to notice but Nadia. She sat to the left of the woman she had been assigned to, a notepad open, pen ready. The woman's name, as given in the file, was Elsa Moreau. She was 63 years old, dressed in a pale blue blazer over a white blouse, reading glasses folded in her hands as though she might need them at any moment, and was content to wait. She had come in first, taken her seat without being told which one, and set a thin manila folder on the table in front of her. She had not opened it. She did not seem nervous. That was the first thing Nadia noticed, and she filed it away without understanding it yet. The hearing examiner, whose name placard read R. Drummond, entered 3 minutes late, dropped a folder of his own onto the officer's table, and sat down without looking at either of them. He was a heavy-set man in a dark suit, somewhere in his mid-50s, the kind of face that had learned long ago to show nothing it didn't choose to show. He sorted through his papers once, then looked up at Elsa with the expression of a man who already knew how this was going to go. "Mrs. Moreau," he said, "you are here today on a petition for restoration of naturalized citizenship, previously lapsed for non-residency. Is that correct?" Nadia translated. Elsa said, in Spanish, that it was. "And you claim," Drummond said, emphasizing the word in a way that Nadia felt but did not yet name, that your absence from the country for the relevant 18-year period was due to continuous federal employment abroad. Is that the basis of your petition? Elsa said yes. She had worked for the Office of Federal Records Administration, a posting she had held from 1982 through 2012, based initially in Washington, then successively at federal archival facilities in 3 overseas territories. She had served continuously. She had documentation. Drummond looked at his papers. He did not look up. The slight was not in a raised voice or a pointed finger. It was in the quality of his inattention, the way a man reviews a file he has already decided about, while the person who lived it sits across the table. "I'm looking at your file, Mrs. Moreau, and I am not finding a federal employment record corroborating that claim." Nadia translated. Elsa was still. Nadia had expected some reaction, a protest, a shift in posture. There was none. Elsa's hands were folded. She was listening the way a person listens who has learned that composure is not surrender. It is how you outlast the room. "What I have," Drummond continued, "is a self-reported employment history, self-attested, with no agency confirmation attached. That does not, under Section 12.4-C of the Restoration Guidelines, constitute sufficient documentation for the employment exemption. Without agency confirmation, I cannot accept the exemption, and the petition as filed does not meet the threshold." He closed the folder. The gesture was not dramatic. It was practiced. "I'll be recommending denial." Nadia translated. The room was quiet. The fluorescent light pulsed once. Elsa Moreau unfolded her reading glasses, set them on her nose, opened the manila folder in front of her, and took out a single sheet of paper. She placed it on the table in front of her and did not push it forward. She looked at Drummond. "The agency confirmation," she said, in Spanish, and Nadia translated, "is available in the National Personnel Records System. My employee number is 44 OFRA 7821. The record has been active since 1982 and was not closed at separation. It is a federal archival record. It does not expire." Drummond glanced at the paper without picking it up. Mrs. Moreau, the burden of production is on the petitioner. If you had a federal record, it should have been attached to your filing. I was informed by the filing office, Elsa said, still even, that self-attestation with an employee number was acceptable for initial submission, and that the hearing officer would pull the record if required. That is what the instructions said. Drummond's expression did not change. That may be what you were told. I am telling you what the finding requires. Nadia finished translating and looked at her notepad. She had underlined the word denial, without being aware she had done it. Then the door at the back of the room opened. The supervising hearing officer, a woman in her early 40s named, as Nadia would later learn, Supervising Officer Delacroix, had come in quietly, as supervising officers do when they are checking in on a session. She had a tablet under her arm and a cup of coffee in her hand. She stood near the back wall and listened. She had heard perhaps 30 seconds of the exchange before she set the coffee cup down on the credenza beside the door. Mr. Drummond, she said, has the NPARS terminal been queried? Drummond turned. The petitioner's documentation was insufficient under. Has the terminal been queried? Delacroix said again, not as a question this time. A pause. No. Delacroix looked at the wheeled cart in the corner, the monitor dark, the keyboard dusty at the edges. She walked to it, rolled it to the center of the room and turned it on. The screen came up slowly, the Federal Records interface loading in white and blue. She looked at Elsa. Your employee number, please. Elsa did not check her paper. She recited it from memory. 44 Ofra 78021. Delacroix typed. The room was quiet. Drummond straightened the papers in front of him, a motion Nadia would think about later, the hands doing something because there was nothing else to do. They waited. The cursor blinked on the screen. Nadia looked at Elsa. Elsa was looking at her hands, which were folded in her lap, the reading glasses still on her nose. She was not watching the screen. She had no reason to watch the screen. She already knew what was there. The federal record system was not fast. There was an irony in this that Nadia would not find funny until much later. The same archive that held the proof of a woman's life's work moved at the pace of a government server on a Wednesday morning, indifferent to everyone in the room. No one spoke. The fluorescent light pulsed. Drummond set his pen down on his folder. He picked it up again. Nadia looked at her notepad and found she had drawn a small, tight spiral in the margin without knowing it. That was when Nadia understood the composure. It was not patience. It was not nerves held down. It was the specific stillness of a person who does not need the outcome to tell her who she is, because she already knows, and has known the whole time, and has simply been waiting for the room to catch up. Nadia had never sat beside someone like that before. She would not forget it. 11 minutes and 22 seconds passed. Nadia counted, because her job gave her nothing else to do with her hands. The screen changed. Delacroix leaned forward. She read without speaking for a moment. Then she scrolled. Then she scrolled again. Ofra Field Archivist, she read aloud. Not for Drummond. Not for Elsa, but for the record. Date of appointment, March 3rd, 1982. Initial posting, Federal Records Administration, Washington Regional Office. Subsequent postings, Pacific Territories Archival Facility, 1987 to 1994. Caribbean Federal Records Annex, 1994 to 2003. North Atlantic Administrative Archives, 2003 to 2012. Security clearance level, Federal. Years of continuous service, 30. Separation status, honorable retirement. Record status, active and unsealed. She stopped scrolling. The fluorescent light pulsed once. Every posting, Delacroix said. Every clearance level. Every date of service. She looked at Elsa. Your testimony was accurate in every particular. Elsa said, in Spanish, that she knew. Nadia translated. Her voice did not waver. She was surprised by this. Delacroix turned to face Drummond. Her voice, when she spoke, had a quality Nadia had heard only a few times in her life. Not raised, not hard, not cutting, flat. The flatness of a fact stated to someone who should already know it. The employment exemption applies, she said. The residency requirement is waived under federal service provisions. The basis for denial does not exist. She typed for a moment. I am vacating the preliminary finding. Drummond said nothing. His papers were very straight. Delacroix printed 2 documents from the terminal. She signed one, dated it, stamped it, and placed it in Elsa's file. She held the second one. "Mrs. Moreau," she said, and Nadia translated as she spoke, "Your application for restoration of naturalized citizenship is approved. The record will reflect that determination as of today's session." She looked at the stamped paper, then at Elsa. "I am sorry for the time this has taken." Elsa received the document. She looked at it for a moment. Then she removed her reading glasses, folded them, and placed them back in her hand. She said, in Spanish, that she appreciated it. She said it the way a person says a thing they have waited a long time to say, and are now, finally, able to say quietly. Nadia translated. Her throat was tight, and she was not certain why, except that she had spent the last 40 minutes watching someone be told that what she knew about her own life was insufficient, and watching her hold, without faltering, the absolute knowledge that it was not. Delacroix set the second printed document on the desk in front of Drummond. She did not explain it. He picked it up and read it. It was, as Nadia would later learn from the hallway conversation she was not meant to hear but could not avoid, a supervisory referral, formal documentation of procedural failure for failure to query available federal records before issuing a preliminary finding. It would go into his personnel file. It would be reviewed. It was not termination. It was not a verdict. It was a record of what had happened, entered where records are kept, to be read by people who read such things. It was, Nadia thought, exactly what the woman who had just been exonerated had spent 30 years doing for a living, preserving the record, so the truth did not disappear. Drummond signed it without speaking. His pen made a sound on the paper, and then the room was quiet again. Delacroix gathered the file, nodded to Elsa, and left. Drummond followed without meeting anyone's eyes. The door closed behind them both. Elsa Moreau sat for a moment in the empty room. Nadia sat beside her, not certain if she was still needed, not certain what she would say if she were. The monitor on the wheeled cart still glowed, the federal record still open, the name still there, 30 years of service still on the screen, exactly as it had always been. Elsa looked at it once, then she stood, tucked the stamped document into her manila folder, and closed it with the careful, deliberate motion of someone who has spent her life handling things that must not be lost. She turned to Nadia. She said, in Spanish, that she was ready to go. Nadia walked out of the building beside her into the late morning light. She did not tell the woman she was sorry, because the woman had not asked for sorrow. She did not say it was wonderful, because what had happened was not wonderful. It was correct. It was simply, finally, correct, and that was a different thing entirely. Correct does not need an audience. It does not need to be called wonderful. It only needs to be entered into the record, which it now was. They reached the steps. The woman said goodbye and walked to a car where someone was waiting, a figure who opened the door before she reached it, who had been sitting there long enough to know the shape of a wait. Nadia stood on the steps for a moment longer than she needed to. She thought about the 11 minutes, about a cursor blinking, while a room full of people waited to learn what one woman had always known, about the quality of the examiner's stillness once the record appeared, the pen moving without ceremony across the supervisory referral, putting his name on the fact of what he had failed to do. Not a punishment exactly, a correction, the same thing the woman who had just left had spent 30 years building, a record that did not disappear, that told the truth to whoever came looking for it, whether the finder was ready or not. She thought about what it would take to sit in that chair, in that light, in that room. To have a man tell you that what you know about your own life is insufficient, and to hold, without faltering, the knowledge that it is not. To wait 11 minutes and 22 seconds without once looking at the screen, because you already know what is there. She had come in thinking her only job was the translation. She understood, walking to the elevator alone, that she had translated the least important thing in the room. What the woman had shown her was this, that dignity is not what you perform when you are winning. It is what you hold when the room does not yet know you are right. It waits, quiet and certain, while the record loads. And when the screen finally changes, it does not gloat or raise its voice. It simply receives what was always true. That, Nadia thought, stepping into the elevator alone, was enough.